You know those kinds of shifts you never forget? The ones that stick with you, like a scar that doesn't hurt anymore, but you still run your fingers over it sometimes just to remember it happened. Yeah. This was one of those. It was an ordinary Thursday, one of those days when the maternity ward was absolutely buzzing. I'd already been on shift for 6 hours, feet swollen, dying to sit down for just 5 minutes. But you know how it is. Hospitals don't stop. And me, stubborn as ever, I kept going. Because that's what I did best. Taking care of people. That's when Dr. Sarah walked into the break room with this look on her face like she needed help, but didn't quite know how to ask for it. She was a newer OB at the hospital, early 30s, crazy talented, but still getting the hang of the team dynamics. She leaned against the doorframe and said quietly, "Marina, I need you in a room. It's a delicate delivery." Delicate how? I was about to ask, but she gestured for me to follow her into the hallway. Once we'd moved away from everyone else, she continued. "The patient requested total confidentiality. Nobody can know she's here. Her name can't appear in any system for now." I frowned. It wasn't the first time I'd seen a case like this. Sometimes it was protection from someone abusive. Sometimes it was a celebrity wanting privacy. But the way Sarah said it gave me chills. "Is she okay?" I asked. "Physically, yes. Emotionally." Sarah took a deep breath. "You'll understand when you get in there." We walked to the end of the corridor, to that more private section of the maternity ward where the private rooms are. Sarah knocked gently and went in ahead of me. The room had low lighting, almost intimate, and in the middle of the bed, propped up on pillows, was a really young woman. She couldn't have been more than her early 20s, brown hair pulled back in a messy bun, red eyes from crying so much, hands gripping the sheets tight. When she saw me, she gave this weak little smile, the kind you force when you're trying to be polite, but your whole world is falling apart inside. "Hi," she said in a thin, trembling voice. "Hi, sweetheart." I approached slowly, the way I always did when I sensed someone needed gentleness. "My name's Marina. I'm a nurse here. I'm here to help with your delivery, okay?" She nodded, but kept staring at the window, like she wished she could be anywhere but there. Dr. Sarah did the exam and confirmed it. We were close. The baby would arrive in the next few hours. I started preparing everything, the room, the equipment, that ritual I knew by heart. But there was something different about that room, a tension I couldn't quite figure out. It was when I went to check the young woman's vitals that she grabbed my arm. The touch was gentle, but desperate. "Please," she whispered. "Don't let anyone in here. Nobody can know." I held her hand back, in that maternal way that just comes naturally when you see someone suffering. "It's okay. You're safe here." I paused. "Do you want to tell me what's worrying you so much?" She bit her lip, looked at the ceiling, and tears started rolling down. It wasn't dramatic crying. It was that silent cry of someone who's cried so much they don't even have the energy to sob anymore. I shouldn't have done this." Her voice broke. "But I needed the money. My mom's sick. We were losing the house. And then this opportunity came up." "Opportunity?" My heart squeezed. "What kind of opportunity, honey?" She took a deep breath, like she was gathering courage to let it all out at once. "I'm a surrogate." The words came out fast, almost ashamed. "A couple paid me to carry their baby. I did IVF and everything. Signed contract, lawyer, all proper and legal. But She looked at me with a desperation that hurt. "I got attached, Marina. I shouldn't have. I knew I couldn't, but I felt him growing inside me. I felt every kick, every hiccup. And now I don't know if I can give him up." There it was. I understood the secrecy. It wasn't just a legal issue. It was a matter of the heart. This young woman had spent 9 months creating a bond with a child who technically wasn't hers. And now she was here, about to give birth, torn between the contractual obligation and the mother's love that had sprouted without asking permission. I didn't know what to say, because what could I say? It'll be okay? Will it? You'll get through this? How? Does the couple know you feel this way? I asked carefully. She shook her head no. They didn't even come. Said they'd pick up the baby after he was born, at hospital discharge. Like it was picking up a package. Her voice failed. I tried to talk to them, but they don't want contact. They think it'll complicate things emotionally. You know that moment when you feel like the floor disappears? That's what I felt, because I'd seen a lot of things in my years of nursing, but this was an emotional complexity that went way beyond medical protocol. Dr. I? Sarah came back into the room and waved at me. Marina, we need her in the delivery room. It's time. The young woman squeezed my hand hard. Marina, when the baby's born, will you stay with him until I can think straight? Just until I know what to do? I swallowed hard and nodded. I'll stay. I promise. And that's how one of the most intense nights of my life began. The delivery went smoothly, technically speaking. The young woman was strong, brave even. Between contractions, she'd squeeze my hand and breathe deep, trying to control the fear written all over her face. Dr. Sarah handled everything calmly, but I could see she was anxious too. It wasn't just a delivery. It was a delicate situation we didn't know how it would end. When the baby finally arrived, it was a boy. Tiny, but healthy. His cry echoed through the room, and man, that sound always gives me chills. Doesn't matter how many times I hear it, it always reminds me that life is this stubborn miracle that insists on happening, even when everything seems confusing. I took the baby, cleaned him carefully, did the first assessments. Everything good. 10 fingers, 10 little toes, strong lungs. A perfect baby. But when I looked at the mother, she had her eyes closed. Not from exhaustion. It was from fear. Fear of looking. Fear of getting even more attached. Want to hold him? I asked softly. She shook her head no, too quickly. I can't. If I hold him, I won't be able to. Her voice disappeared. I respected that. I wrapped the baby in a light blue blanket and placed him in the warming bassinet beside us. Dr. Sarah finished the procedures and left the room to do the mandatory paperwork, leaving me alone with the two of them. I stood there, looking at that baby sleeping peacefully, oblivious to all the pain around him. And I looked at the young woman in the bed, who had turned to the opposite side, curled up, like she wanted to disappear. That's when I decided to do what I always do when I don't know what to do. Have a real conversation. Can I ask you something? I sat on the edge of the bed. She stayed facing away, but murmured a yes. Do you want this baby? Really? Deep in your heart? Silence. Long. Heavy. And then she turned to me, face wet with tears. Wanting isn't the issue, Marina. I signed a contract. I got the money. I saved my mom. This baby has parents waiting for him. Real parents, who'll give him everything he needs. I'm just the womb he needed to exist. But you're not just that. My voice came out firmer than I expected. You carried him. You felt him grow. You're the first voice he heard. The first heartbeat he listened to. That's not nothing. She sobbed. One of those deep sobs that comes from a place we didn't even know existed inside us. But what if I can't be a mother? What if I don't have money to raise him right? What if I ruin his life just because I'm selfish and want to keep him? I held her hand. Love isn't selfish. And being a mother isn't about having money. It's about being present. It's about caring. And you've been doing that for 9 months. We stayed there, in silence. just listening to the baby breathe in the bassinet. And then I had an idea. I don't know if it was right or wrong, but in that moment it seemed like the only possible thing. I'm going to give you some time. I stood up and picked up the baby. I'll take him to the observation room. You rest, think carefully, and when you're ready, you call me. No rush, no pressure. You decide. She looked at me with a mix of relief and panic. And the couple? Let me handle the couple. For now, they don't need to know the baby's been born. We have a few hours. It wasn't protocol. It wasn't the right thing to do bureaucratically. But sometimes, we need to bend the rules a little to give people's hearts time to figure things out. I left the room with the baby in my arms, and Dr. Sarah intercepted me in the hallway. Marina, what are you doing? Giving her time to think, I said firmly. Sarah sighed, but nodded. I'll pretend I didn't see. But don't take too long, because the couple already called asking if the baby was born. I took the baby to the observation room, placed him in the warming bassinet, and stayed there, looking at that perfect little creature who'd become the center of an emotional storm nobody knew how to resolve. And you know what I thought? I thought about how many stories like this I'd seen. How many women torn between what they want and what they think they should do. How many times the heart screams one thing and the head screams another. Life's like that, you guys. We think everything has a right answer, but sometimes the right answer is exactly accepting that everything's confusing and that it's okay to feel everything at the same time. And look, if you're following this story so far and feeling a tightness in your chest, know that I was feeling it too. Because it wasn't just a delivery. It was a mother's heart breaking in half. And me, being a mother too, I know well what that pain of wanting to protect, and at the same time having to let go feels like. If you've also been through something similar, or know someone who has, leave it here in the comments. Sometimes we need to know we're not alone in this beautiful mess that is being human. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, go ahead and subscribe. Hit that bell. Because these stories are for us to share together, like a family. Because that's what we are here, right? A family that takes care of each other. Anyway, back to the story. I was there, with the baby sleeping, when I heard hurried footsteps in the hallway. The footsteps stopped at the observation room door. I turned and saw a tall man in a suit, around 40, with a kind of irritated expression. Behind him, a blonde woman, elegant, with an expensive purse on her shoulder and an anxious look. Didn't take a genius to know who they were. "Are you the couple?" I asked, already instinctively placing myself between them and the bassinet. The man nodded, impatient. "We are. Where's our son? They said the delivery was almost 2 hours ago." "Our son." The ownership in his voice bothered me in a way I can't even explain. "The baby's fine." I kept my tone professional. "But the mother needs some time before..." "The mother?" The man frowned. "She's not the mother. She's the gestational carrier. There's a contract. We paid for this, and now I want my son." The woman beside him put her hand on his arm, kind of embarrassed. "Robert, calm down," but he ignored her. "I knew this was going to be a problem. I warned you we couldn't let her create a bond. But no, you insisted on hiring an American girl to keep it domestic. Now here we are." The woman turned red, but didn't fight back. And me? I felt an anger rising that almost made me forget I was there as a professional. "Look, I understand your frustration." I took a deep breath to not say what I was thinking. But the young woman just gave birth. She's emotionally shaken. You need to have a little empathy. The man laughed dryly. "We had empathy. We paid all her expenses, paid for expensive treatment for her mother, gave her a place to live during the pregnancy. We fulfilled everything. Now it's her turn to fulfill it." I looked at the woman. trying to find some trace of humanity there. And you, ma'am? Do you think the same? She looked away, clearly uncomfortable. I just want my son. We tried for years. Treatments, doctors, everything. When we finally got this chance. Her voice broke. Please, nurse. We're not monsters. We just want to be parents. And there, you guys, I saw both sides of the coin. Because it wasn't simple. It wasn't black and white. There was a young woman who got attached to a baby she promised to hand over. And there was a couple who dreamed of being parents and had followed all the legal procedures for it. Who was right? Who was wrong? Look, I tried again. Let me go to the room with you. Let's talk to her. Maybe if you look each other in the eyes. If you really talk. No. The man was categorical. I'm not going to negotiate what's already mine. Either she hands over the baby now, or I'm calling my lawyer. That's when Dr. Sarah appeared again, this time accompanied by the hospital social worker. There's a little problem. The social worker, Mrs. Patterson, a woman around 60 with a firm but kind manner, entered and closed the door. I just spoke with our legal team, and it seems your contract has some weaknesses. The man went pale. What do you mean? The gestational carrier can legally withdraw from the handover up to 48 hours after birth. And even after that, if there are signs of coercion or maternal regret, the case can go to court. Mrs. Patterson crossed her arms. So, what I suggest is that everyone takes a breath and we resolve this calmly. The woman sat in a chair, putting her hands over her face. The man started calling his lawyer, irritated. And me? I stayed there, looking at the baby sleeping peacefully, not knowing he was the center of a war nobody was going to win. That's when I saw the young woman entering the room, leaning on the wall, still weak from delivery, but with a determined look I hadn't seen before. I'm keeping him. Her voice came out firm, without trembling. The entire room froze. The man hung up the phone abruptly. You can't. You signed... I know what I signed. She interrupted. And I know you can sue me. You can ask for the money back. I'll sell everything. I'll work the rest of my life if I have to. But I'm not giving up my son. My son. The first time she said it like that. The woman stood up from the chair, eyes brimming with tears. But we dreamed about this baby. We planned everything. His nursery's ready. The clothes, the toys. Her voice broke. Please, we'll love him. We'll give him everything. The young woman looked at the woman, and for a second, I saw that she was also suffering because of that pain. Because nobody there was a villain. They were just broken people trying to pick up the pieces. I know. The young woman spoke softly. And I'm sorry. Really. But when he was born, and I heard his cry, I knew. I knew I couldn't do it. Because he's mine. He always was mine. From the very first second. The man moved forward, but Mrs. Patterson got in front. Sir, I understand your frustration, but threatening won't solve anything. What I suggest is that you find your lawyers, and the young woman finds hers, and that everything gets resolved in court, calmly and respectfully. He took a deep breath, grabbed the woman's hand, and left without looking back. The woman hesitated, looked at the baby one last time, with a look of deep loss, and left too. And there we stayed. Me, the young woman, Mrs. Patterson, Dr. Sarah, and the baby. The young woman walked to the bassinet, slowly, like she was afraid someone would stop her. And when she picked up the baby for the first time, she broke down. Cried in a way I'll never forget. Cried with relief, with fear, with love, with guilt, all at once. And I cried too, because sometimes we can't hold that much emotion. The following days were intense. The young woman, whose name was Emily, stayed hospitalized for another 48 hours, as was protocol. The couple activated their lawyers, as expected. A legal battle began that would be long, painful, and expensive. But you know what I saw? I saw a mother. A real mother. Who woke up at dawn to nurse. Who looked at her son with that look that only those who truly love have. Who sang softly. Who counted the little fingers. Who cried from exhaustion but smiled at the same time. I followed the case from a distance, because after she was discharged, I lost direct contact. But a few months later, I was walking through the hospital hallway when I ran into Dr. Sarah. "Marina, you won't believe this." She pulled me aside. "Emily came here today, brought the baby for a routine checkup." "And?" My heart sped up. "The couple dropped the lawsuit. Seems the wife, Jennifer, convinced her husband to let it go. She said she didn't want a child who wasn't theirs from the heart, that it wasn't worth destroying everyone's lives because of it." I breathed a sigh of relief. It wasn't the perfect ending, because nobody there came out unscathed. But it was the possible ending. The ending where love won over the contract, where the heart spoke louder than the paper. Days later, I was leaving my shift when I saw a young woman sitting in the reception area. It took me a few seconds to recognize her, but when I did, my heart filled up. It was Emily, with the baby in her arms, chubby, healthy, sleeping peacefully. "Marina!" She smiled when she saw me, and it was a different smile. Tired, but happy. "Emily," I approached. "What a nice surprise. I came to bring him for his vaccine, and I wanted to thank you." She held my hand. "Because that day when you gave me time to think, when you didn't judge me, you gave me courage to do what I had to do." I squeezed her hand back. "You don't need to thank me. You're the one who was brave." "It's been hard," she admitted. "Money's tight. My mom helps as she can. I went back to work and do some side gigs at night. But every time I look at him, I know I made the right choice." She showed me the baby up close, and I saw he had his eyes open, curious, looking at me with that innocence only babies have. "What did you name him?" "Michael." She smiled. "After my grandfather. A man who raised 6 kids alone after my grandmother died. He taught me that love doesn't need money. It needs presence." I felt that lump in my throat, the good kind. "Your grandfather was right." We talked a bit more. She told me she was in therapy, that she had some friends who helped with Michael, that she'd found a church that gave food baskets to those who needed them. It wasn't easy, but she was managing. When she left, I stood there, watching her walk away with the baby in her arms, and I thought about everything that had happened. I thought about the couple who wanted so badly to be parents but had to give up. I thought about Emily, who chose the harder path but the path of the heart. I thought about Michael, who had no idea about all the storm that happened before he arrived. And you know what I learned from this story? That motherhood isn't about biology. It's not about money. It's not about a contract or signed paper. Motherhood is about choice. It's about being there, even when it's hard. It's about looking into a child's eyes and saying, "I'm staying." Emily wasn't Michael's biological mother, but she was his mother, because she chose. Every day, she chooses again. And the couple? I don't know what happened to them. I hope they found another path to be parents, because their desire was genuine. But maybe they needed to understand that a child isn't something you buy or order. A child is something that arrives, often in the most unexpected way. This story made me think a lot about what it means to be a mother, about what it means to be family. And every time I see a mother at the hospital, no matter how she got there, I remember Emily. I remember that each love story is unique, complicated, and absolutely real. If this story touched your heart in any way, know that you're not alone. We all carry our own battles, our fears, our doubts. But that's exactly why stories like this need to be told and heard. If you know someone who needs to hear this message of hope, share this video. Sometimes, one story can be the light someone needs to keep going. And if you have your own story to tell, leave it here in the comments. This space is ours. It's safe, and every word matters. I read every comment, and I know many of you also read and find strength in each other's experiences. See you in the next video, with another story that will move your heart. Until then, take care of yourself, take care of those you love, and remember, life is always worth it. A warm hug, and until next time.